Hello, welcome to Law with Subhadra Mailsami. Today we are in the crossroads, the legal and economic insights on the US-China trade war. In the ever-evolving arena of global trade, few events have been as disruptive or as defining as the US-China trade war. What began as a clash of tariffs quickly escalated into a far-reaching rivalry, one that now touches supply chains, technology, and even the strategic ambitions of nations. But what does this mean for a third-party nation, a rising economic power like India? As a legal practitioner tracking international trade and policy, I want to break this down not with speculation but with a clear eyed analysis. Because when elephants fight, the grass suffers, but sometimes the grass also grows stronger. Now, coming to the tariff tug of war, the origins and the impacts, if we look into, let's start with the basics. The United States imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions worth of Chinese goods, citing trade imbalances, IP theft, and unfair access. China retaliated. This tit for tat escalated into a full scale trade war, disrupting global supply chains and forcing companies to rethink and where and how they do their business. So, from a legal perspective, this triggered renegotiations of trade agreements, re evaluation of WTO rules, and created space for new bilateral deals. And for India, this disruption opened a dual reality, a risk and the opportunity. So, when we look into that, it is very simple. On one hand, American firms began seeking alternatives to Chinese manufacturing. Indian exporters in textiles, pharma, and electronics saw a surge in interest. But on the other hand, India relies heavily on Chinese imports, especially in critical sectors like APIs for medicine, solar equipments, and electronics. Disruptions here led to price volatility, input shortages, and legal compliance challenges. As an advisor to manufacturing clients, I've seen how these dependencies expose vulnerabilities, not just commercial, but also the regulatory aspects. Now, coming to the strategic repositioning, India steps up. But where there's disruption, there's opportunity. India is now seeing renewed attention in sectors once overshadowed by China. Take Apple's decision to ramp up manufacturing in India or the growing number of US and EU contracts landing in Indian pharma and the apparel industry. This isn't just opportunistic trade, it's a strategic repositioning. The global boardroom buzzword is China plus one, and India wants to be that plus one. But the key legal question here is, will India merely attract interest or will it convert that into actual investment? So, not that all that glitters means dumping and dependency. So, let's not romanticize this opportunity. Cheaper Chinese goods unable to enter the US may flood third party markets like India. That raises concerns of serious dumping issues and threat to local industries. Indian trade laws, particularly under the Custom Tariffs Act, does not provide mechanisms for anti-dumping duties, but enforcement is complex. SMEs often lack the legal bandwidth to pursue these remedies. Meanwhile, rising input costs due to limited Chinese supplies can derail India's competitiveness unless we proactively diversify supply chains and enhance the domestic capacity. Now, coming to the diplomacy over the drama, India's balancing act. Unlike the US or the China, India hasn't taken a hardline stance. Instead, it has practiced what I call strategic ambidexterity. Rather than retaliating, India has offered selective concessions to keep the trade flowing with the US. Rather than blanket bans on China, it has imposed targeted restrictions, especially in sensitive tech sectors. This nuanced approach is both diplomatic and legally sound. It keeps India in the global conversations without overcommitting or antagonizing. Now, the legal path forward is it the reform over the rhetoric? To truly seize this moment, India must address structural barriers. As a legal professional, I can tell you investment treaties and tax reforms are only the beginning. We need more simplified regulatory approvals, clear land acquisition frameworks, better IP enforcements, and a predictable dispute resolution system. Only then can we move from being an alternative to China to being a destination in our own right. Coming to some of the final thoughts, the US China trade war has forced the world to rethink global trade and it has handed India an unexpected but invaluable opportunity. But the opportunity without action is just a potential. So India must choose competitiveness over the complacency, diplomacy over drama, and policy over politics. Because this is not just a story about tariffs, it's about the future of India's place in the global economy. And the time is to act is now. I hope this video would have been informative to all of you. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Until then, bye bye.